In the quiet moments of our daily lives, we often fail to notice how the subtle, yet powerful force of pride slowly takes root in our hearts. It is not the loud, boisterous kind of pride that seeks attention. Rather, it is the silent, invisible kind that disguises itself as self-reliance, confidence, and the illusion of control over our circumstances. It is in these moments when we rely solely on our own strength and intellect that we unknowingly distance ourselves from the grace of God. In the modern world, this pride is so deeply woven into the fabric of our society that we rarely recognize it as a threat. We are taught to be independent, to stand strong, and to rely on ourselves. But this often leads us down a path of spiritual isolation. How often do we find ourselves struggling with something, yet instead of turning to God for wisdom and strength, we try to handle it all alone? And in doing so, we miss the very thing that could help us, the grace and guidance of our Creator. The key to understanding this is in recognizing that true strength comes not from ourselves, but from our dependence on God. It is in surrendering our will to His that we find true peace and purpose. But before we can fully embrace this truth, we must first confront the dangerous illusion of self-sufficiency. The most dangerous sin of the 21st century is not one that is loud and obvious. It is the quiet pride that grows from our desire to control, to appear strong, and to rely on our own wisdom. This is the kind of pride that leads us to spiritual stagnation, for it closes our hearts to the influence of the Holy Spirit and blocks the flow of grace that God wishes to pour into our lives. As we reflect on this, let us remember the words of James 4:6. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. These words are not just a warning, but an invitation, a call to recognize the truth of our dependence on God. When we hold on to our pride, we push God away, unknowingly choosing to live in opposition to the very one who created us. But when we humble ourselves, acknowledging our need for Him, we open ourselves to His grace, which transforms our hearts and minds. It is a paradox, one that requires deep reflection. In order to be truly strong, we must first admit our weakness and turn to God for strength. I recall the story of St. Augustine, whose life offers a profound lesson in the dangers of pride and the power of humility. Before his conversion, Augustine lived a life driven by self-will, pride, and the pursuit of worldly pleasure. He believed that he was in control of his destiny and that his own intellect and desires could guide him through life. But it was only when he surrendered to God's will, when he finally admitted his inability to save himself, that he experienced true transformation. In his Confessions, Augustine writes, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you."
This realization came only after years of struggle with pride, self-sufficiency, and inner turmoil. Augustine's humility did not come easily. It was forged through years of searching, of running from God, and of finally recognizing that only in God could he find true peace. This story teaches us that humility is not about diminishing ourselves, but about recognizing our place before God. It is about acknowledging that we are not the masters of our own fate, but rather humble vessels for God's grace and purpose. And it is in this recognition that we find our true strength. In our pride, we seek control over our lives, but in humility, we open ourselves to the divine will, which leads us to true freedom. As we reflect on the subtle nature of pride and its grip on our hearts, I invite you to pray the following prayer for humility. Lord, I come before you, acknowledging my need for your grace. Help me to see where pride has taken root in my heart, and give me the strength to surrender my will to you. Teach me to trust in your wisdom and to lean not on my own understanding, but on your guidance. May I walk in humility, recognizing that true strength comes from you alone. In moments of difficulty, When the temptation to rely on ourselves is greatest, let this prayer be a reminder that we do not have to face life's challenges alone. God is with us, ready to offer His strength when we humble ourselves before Him. But this is not a one-time act. Humility is a daily practice, a conscious choice to surrender our plans, our desires, and our efforts to God. Each day we are called to ask ourselves, am I seeking to control this situation, or am I trusting in God's wisdom and grace to guide me? This question is not an easy one, and the temptation to pride is strong. But with each act of humility, we take a step closer to the peace and strength that God desires for us. It is a process, one that requires patience and perseverance. But with God's grace, it is a journey that leads us to deeper intimacy with Him. As we close this reflection, I encourage you to meditate on the words of St. Augustine. Our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Let us bring our restless hearts to God, surrendering our pride and our self-reliance, and allowing His grace to fill us with peace. And remember, this is only the beginning. There is much more to explore, and I invite you to stay with us as we continue on this journey of spiritual growth. Together, we can learn to walk humbly with God, trusting in His guidance, and opening our hearts to His transforming love. May God bless you with the humility to recognize your dependence on Him, and may His grace fill you with peace as you seek to follow His will in all things. As we move deeper into understanding the nature of pride, we begin to see how it subtly affects every aspect of our lives.
We are often unaware of how pride silently thrives in the corners of our hearts, feeding on our desire for control, recognition, and self-sufficiency. This is especially true in our modern age, where the message of independence and self-reliance is so deeply ingrained in our society. From a young age, we are told to take charge of our destiny, to carve out our own path, and to believe in our ability to achieve greatness. But in doing so, we may unwittingly push away the very thing that offers us true peace and freedom, the grace of God. This quiet pride often goes unnoticed because it is not the overt arrogance or boastfulness that we tend to associate with pride. It is the pride that hides behind our attempts to control every situation, to protect our own image, and to rely solely on our understanding. It is the pride that says, I can handle this on my own. I don't need help. I don't need God. In many ways, this type of pride is more dangerous than its louder counterpart because it operates in the background, unnoticed, until it is grown too strong to ignore. Reflecting on this, we are reminded of the wisdom of Saint Francis of Assisi, whose life was a powerful testament to the transformation that occurs when one surrenders pride and embraces humility. Francis, born into a wealthy family, lived a life of excess and self-indulgence in his youth. He had everything: wealth, status, and the admiration of his peers. Yet, despite all his worldly success, he felt a deep emptiness inside. He realized that the prideful pursuit of worldly things only led him further from the peace he longed for. In a moment of profound realization, he chose to renounce his possessions, his social standing, and his desires for fame. He embraced poverty and humility, recognizing that true peace could only be found in total surrender to God's will. Saint Francis's life teaches us that humility is not about diminishing ourselves, but about allowing God to fill us with His love, wisdom, and strength. Humility does not seek recognition or approval. It simply seeks to do God's will, regardless of the outcome. This is the essence of true strength, strength that comes not from self-reliance, but from dependence on God. Francis found peace not in the accumulation of wealth or the pursuit of success, but in the surrender of his will to the will of God. His example is a call to all of us to examine the areas of our lives where pride has taken root, to let go of our desire for control, and to trust that God's plan is far greater than our own. In our own lives, we may not be called to renounce material wealth as St. Francis did, but we are all called to examine the subtle ways in which pride manifests. Perhaps it appears in our desire to control the future, to ensure that everything goes according to our plans. Or maybe it appears in the form of perfectionism, where we feel that we must always have everything figured out and in order, afraid to show any weakness or vulnerability.
The truth is that none of us can control the future, and none of us can live a perfect life. Only by surrendering our will to God can we find the peace and freedom we long for. Let us take a moment to reflect on the words of James 4:10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. This simple but profound verse reminds us that when we humble ourselves before God, He does not leave us in our lowliness. Instead, He lifts us up, not by exalting our pride, but by filling us with His grace. In the act of humility, we do not lose our dignity or worth. Rather, we gain a deeper understanding of our true identity as children of God, loved and cherished by Him. Humility is not about putting ourselves down. It is about recognizing that we are nothing without God, and that our true strength comes from His love. This is a humbling thought, and it is a call to surrender. As we go about our days, we are invited to examine our hearts and ask ourselves, where am I relying on my own strength and not on God's grace? Where am I resisting God's will because I think I know better? These are the questions that, when asked sincerely, can lead us to a deeper humility and a greater dependence on God's grace. To help guide us in this journey, let us pray a prayer of surrender and humility. Lord, I come before you acknowledging that I cannot do this on my own. I have tried to control my life, to plan my own way, and to rely on my own understanding. But I now recognize that only in you can I find true peace and strength. I surrender my will to yours. Please help me to walk in humility, to trust in your wisdom, and to rely on your grace in every moment. May your will be done in my life, and may I always seek to follow you no matter the cost. As we continue on this path, let us remember that humility is not something we achieve once and for all. It is a daily practice. Each day, we must choose to humble ourselves, to surrender our desires, and to trust that God knows what is best for us. It is through this constant surrender that we grow in spiritual strength and maturity. As we embrace humility, we make room for God to work in our lives, to shape us, and to guide us on the path of peace and joy. In closing, I invite you to reflect on the life of St. Francis and ask yourself, how can I embody the humility that he so beautifully lived? What areas of my life can I surrender to God today? May these reflections lead you to a deeper understanding of the power of humility and the grace that comes from surrendering our pride to the loving embrace of God. May God bless you with the strength to humble yourself before Him, and may His grace fill your heart with peace as you walk in His will. In our ongoing exploration of pride, we come to understand that it is not enough to simply acknowledge its presence in our lives. We must learn how to actively combat it, how to transform the heart from a place of self-reliance into a place of trust and humility.
This transformation does not happen overnight, and it requires more than just a mental acknowledgement of our pride. It demands a heart change, a surrendering of our deepest desires, the ones that pull us toward control and self-dependence, and an embrace of God's will, which often leads us into a place of vulnerability. The act of surrendering ourselves to God is not one of passivity or defeat. Rather, it is an active and profound choice to align our will with His. This is where the true power of humility lies, not in weakness, but in the strength of recognizing our need for God in all things. The challenge is to surrender, not just when life is difficult, but even in our successes, when pride may subtly creep in and convince us that we are the masters of our own fate. Saint Teresa of Avila, a woman of profound humility and wisdom, teaches us through her life how this surrender can bring true peace. As a Carmelite nun, Teresa experienced great trials, physical illness, inner turmoil, and the challenges of reforming her order. Yet through it all, she maintained a deep trust in God, surrendering herself to His will, despite the difficulties she faced. In one of her most famous prayers, she wrote, "Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices." This prayer of Saint Teresa reflects the deep peace that comes from surrendering pride and embracing God's plan for our lives. In times of struggle, it is easy to become consumed by fear, worry, and the desire to control the situation. But when we remember that God is in control, that He is faithful and unchanging, we can release our grip on the situation and trust that He will guide us. The strength of humility is not in our ability to avoid challenges, but in our willingness to trust God even when things seem uncertain. James 1:5 tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." In moments when we feel the pull of pride, when we want to rely on our own understanding, we are reminded that true wisdom comes from God alone. It is in asking for His wisdom, in surrendering our thoughts and desires to Him, that we find clarity and peace. When we choose to ask for God's wisdom, we are opening ourselves to the Holy Spirit, who will guide us and reveal the truth in ways we cannot on our own. Consider for a moment the story of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, who underwent a profound transformation from a life of self-centered ambition to one of deep humility and service. Ignatius, once a soldier seeking personal glory and success, found himself wounded in battle, leading to a long period of recovery. During this time, he read spiritual books, and through deep reflection, he began to understand that true greatness did not lie in worldly success, but in serving God. His life became a testament to the power of surrender and trust in God's will. In his famous spiritual exercises, Ignatius encourages us to place ourselves in God's hands completely, saying, "Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my will, all that I have and call my own. You have given all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace. That is enough for me." Saint Ignatius's prayer is a beautiful example of the radical surrender that leads to spiritual freedom. It is not a prayer of defeat, but one of strength, acknowledging that everything we have is a gift from God, and that it is only through Him that we can truly live. When we surrender our will to God, we find freedom, not in the control we once sought, but in the deep peace that comes from knowing that He is in control of all things. In our own lives, we must learn to pray such prayers of surrender. Each day, we must ask ourselves, where am I holding on to control? What areas of my life am I still trying to navigate alone, without fully trusting in God's plan? The more we are able to let go of our desire for control, the more we make space for God's grace to flow into our lives. The process of surrendering our will does not mean that we no longer make decisions or take action. It means that we do so with an open heart, trusting that God's wisdom will guide us. Let us now pray a prayer of surrender and trust. Lord, I come before you today, acknowledging that I cannot do this on my own. I surrender my will to you, knowing that you know what is best for me. Help me to trust in your wisdom and guidance, to let go of my need for control, and to follow your will with humility. May your grace fill me, and may your love be the foundation of every decision. I trust in you, Lord, and I place my life in your hands. As we go about our days, let this prayer be a reminder that humility is not about weakness, but about recognizing the strength that comes from surrendering to God's will. Each time we face a challenge, each time we feel the temptation to rely on our own wisdom or strength, we can pause and remember that true peace comes from trusting God completely. It is in surrendering our desires, our fears, and our plans to Him that we experience the profound peace and grace that only He can provide. May God bless you with the courage to surrender your will to Him, and may His grace fill your heart with peace as you trust in His wisdom and guidance. As we continue our journey into the depths of humility, it becomes clear that true humility is not merely an external practice, but an internal transformation. It is the way of the heart, the willingness to acknowledge the truth of our dependence on God in all things. Humility is not just the absence of pride, it is the presence of something greater. The active recognition that without God we are nothing, and with God we can do all things.
This is where the power of humility truly lies, not in weakness, but in the strength of recognizing that we are not in control, and that is exactly how God desires us to live. The path to this understanding of humility requires us to look beyond our own desires and plans, and to turn our gaze toward God's greater purpose. The beauty of humility is not that it leaves us with a sense of defeat, but rather that it opens our hearts to receive the fullness of God's grace and wisdom. We often think of humility as something that limits us, that holds us back from achieving greatness. But in truth, humility is what opens the door to the greatest transformation we can experience, the ability to live in complete trust in God's will and to see His plans unfold in our lives. A powerful example of this can be found in the life of Saint Benedict, whose humility and wisdom shaped the monastic life in profound ways. Benedict, the founder of Western monasticism, lived a life marked by simplicity and devotion to God. He began his journey as a young man seeking truth and meaning, and through his struggles and deep relationship with God, he came to understand that true strength comes from humility. Saint Benedict's rule, which continues to guide monks and lay people alike, is founded on the principle that nothing is to be preferred to the work of God. In this rule, humility is the foundation of all Christian living, not as an outward show of modesty, but as an inner recognition that all we do must be done for God's glory, not our own. In his rule, Saint Benedict provides us with a guide to spiritual living, emphasizing that humility is key to truly living for God. He teaches that humility is not about suppressing our desires, but about aligning our desires with God's will. It is in this alignment that true peace and fulfillment are found. Saint Benedict's life exemplifies how humility is not a passive state of mind, but an active choice, a decision to trust God above all else, and to seek His will in everything we do. We are called to take this principle into our own lives. But how can we begin to cultivate such humility? How do we learn to surrender our own desires and plans to God in a world that constantly urges us to seek personal success and recognition? The answer lies in a deeper understanding of God's nature and His love for us. When we recognize that our lives are a gift from God, that every breath we take is an act of His grace, we begin to see that nothing we achieve or possess is truly ours. It is all a gift entrusted to us by the One who created us. The key to humility, therefore, is not just recognizing our own limitations, but fully accepting the truth that all we have and all we are belongs to God. When we hold on to this truth, we free ourselves from the burden of pride and self-sufficiency. We no longer need to prove ourselves, because we understand that our worth is not determined by our accomplishments, but by our identity as children of God.
This is the peace that humility brings, the freedom to live fully in God's grace without the need to compete, to control, or to boast. Consider the words of Jesus in Matthew 11:29. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Jesus offers us rest, not the kind of rest that comes from escaping from our responsibilities, but the deeper rest that comes from surrendering our will to God's. This is the essence of humility, recognizing that the yoke we carry is not meant to burden us, but to draw us closer to God. When we allow Jesus to lead us, we find that His way is lighter because it is aligned with His divine purpose. In our own lives, this means that we must learn to approach our challenges with humility, acknowledging that we are not in control and trusting that God's plan is better than our own. It is not about pretending to be weak, but about allowing God's strength to work through us. Each time we face a decision, a difficulty, or a temptation, we have the opportunity to choose humility, to surrender our desires, to trust in God's wisdom, and to allow His will to guide us. Let us take a moment to pray for the gift of humility, for the strength to surrender our will to God, and to live in complete trust in His plans. Lord, I come before you today asking for the grace to live humbly before you. Help me to recognize that all I am and all I have comes from you. Teach me to surrender my desires and plans to your will, trusting that you know what is best for me. May I seek your glory in all that I do, and find rest in the knowledge that your love will guide me through every challenge. Give me the strength to live humbly, to follow your example, and to trust that you are always with me, leading me along the path of peace. As we continue our journey, let us remember that humility is not a single moment of surrender, but a continuous practice, a daily choice to trust in God's will, to seek His guidance, and to live for His glory. When we embrace humility, we open ourselves to the fullness of God's grace, and we become vessels for His love and wisdom in the world. May God bless you with the peace that comes from humility, and may His grace fill you with the strength to walk in His will every day. As we reach the conclusion of this journey, we are called to reflect on the deeper, life-transforming truths we have uncovered about humility. The process of spiritual growth, of shedding our pride and self-reliance, is not something that happens in a single moment, but is a lifelong journey. It is through daily surrender, constant trust, and continual reliance on God's grace that we become more fully the people He created us to be. This transformation is not always easy. There will be times when we stumble, when the weight of pride feels too heavy to bear. Yet it is in those very moments of struggle that God's grace can shine the brightest if we allow it.
The final lesson to embrace is that humility is not simply a personal virtue. It is a path to deeper communion with God and a way of living that reflects the love and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Jesus, the ultimate model of humility, shows us that true greatness is found in service, not in power, in giving, not in receiving, in surrendering our own will to the will of the Father. We see this clearly in the Gospel of Matthew 20:26-28. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many. These words of Christ are a powerful reminder that humility is not a passive resignation, but an active choice to love and serve others, just as Jesus did. He did not seek power, nor did He demand recognition. Instead, He humbled Himself, even to the point of death on the cross, because He knew that true glory lies in surrendering to God's will and serving others with love and compassion. Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta offers us a living example of this profound humility. She dedicated her life to serving the poorest of the poor, seeing in each person the face of Christ. Despite her global recognition, she lived a life marked by simplicity and humility. She once said, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love." Mother Teresa's words challenge us to think about humility in terms of how we serve others, no matter how small the act may seem. The humble heart does not seek recognition or praise. It seeks only to love and to serve, just as Christ did. As we reflect on her life, we are reminded that humility is a choice we must make daily, whether in the way we interact with others, in our work, or in the quiet moments of our lives. It is through these small, everyday acts of humility that we grow closer to God and reflect His love to the world. Each time we choose to serve rather than to be served, to love without seeking anything in return, we are walking in the footsteps of Jesus and growing in humility. It is also important to remember that humility does not mean denying our own worth or abilities. It does not require us to belittle ourselves or to hide our gifts. Rather, humility invites us to recognize that our gifts come from God and are meant to be used for His glory. When we acknowledge that everything we have, our talents, our resources, our time, is a gift from God, we can use these gifts with a sense of gratitude and purpose. Humility frees us from the need to boast or compete, allowing us to use our talents selflessly in service to others and to God.
Let us now offer a prayer of surrender and commitment. Lord, I thank You for the gift of humility, for teaching me that true greatness is found in serving others. Help me to release the pride that holds me back from fully trusting in You. May I use the gifts You have given me to serve others, not for my glory, but for Yours. Teach me to follow the example of Jesus, who humbled Himself in love and sacrifice, and to live a life that reflects Your love to the world. I surrender my will to You, trusting that Your plan for my life is far greater than anything I could imagine. May Your grace guide me in all that I do,
and may I always seek to live humbly before you. As we conclude this time of reflection, remember that humility is a lifelong journey, one that requires daily choices, constant surrender, and a heart open to God's grace. It is in these small, faithful acts that we become more fully the people God created us to be. May God bless you with the strength to walk humbly before Him, and may His grace fill your heart with peace as you continue on your spiritual journey.